Well, like many things in life, it's important to be at the right place at the right time. Back in the 60s, when this all started, we were recruiting this Israeli physician whose name was Michel Mirowski. And he conceived of the idea of miniaturizing an external defibrillator, giving it a little intelligence, and being able to implant it as at least a partial solution to the sudden death problem. He asked me if I thought it could be done, and I couldn't think of any reason why it couldn't be. So we finally had one ready for human implantation and did our first patient in 1980. My job was to monitor the functioning of the implanted device. I had a little radio telemetry thing and I would look at it. Dr. Levi Watkins, who was the cardiac surgeon, looked at me and says, "Well, where should we make the incision?" I said, "I don't know, Levi, maybe right here." "Oh, I think that's right." So he made the incision. After the surgery, we induced ventricular fibrillation, and I was waiting for the device to fire, and it was very slow. Finally, at about 30 seconds and it hadn't fired, the electrophysiologist in charge was ready to order that the external defibrillator be, and the paddles be put on. And finally, it started to charge, and in a voice about 3 octaves higher than my normal, I said, "It's charging, it's charging." And sure enough, it charged up, it detected the arrhythmia, it gave the shock and returned to sinus rhythm. And there were just cheers going on in the operating room. It turns out that that first defibrillator that was implanted really wasn't the first, it was the second defibrillator. And when the first one was being unwrapped by the scrub nurse, it slipped out and fell to the ground. It was almost like slow motion, that it was falling to the ground, and the electrophysiologist in charge made a grab for it but missed it. It hit the ground and it had a little dent in it. We decided that we couldn't use that, so we very carefully unwrapped the second one, and it was the second one that was really the first one implanted. Back in those days, we were traveling to a lot of medical meetings and talking about the defibrillator, and in each city we would rent a car. And I joined the ski club because one of the benefits that they had was deep discounts on rental cars. Something like 50% discounts, and that was the only reason. And this ski group was sending out monthly full-color brochures about all of the trips that they were sponsoring. And one day our son got the mail before I did and said, "Daddy, how come you belong to a ski club and we don't ski?"
He was about 7 years old at the time.
The only thing I could think of saying was, "Well, we don't ski because your mother hasn't made the arrangements." And 2 weeks later, she had made the arrangements, and it just stuck.
What are you working on now?
Well, I conceived of the idea of forcing the heart to beat more efficiently by pacing several sites on the heart simultaneously. So I brought that back to Hopkins and we started to study it, and we found that changing the waveform that a pacemaker uses can be quite beneficial. And well, look, it is not out of the realm of possibility that for diabetes, where you have less insulin than is required, that we can pace the pancreas. The idea of a pacemaker for non-cardiac and non-neurologic tissue, that's another crazy idea. But, you know, it's within the realm of possibility. So that's what we're working on now.
I am so very proud of him. And I say it all the time. Morty, in case you all didn't notice, is very humble, extremely humble. And in fact, we have a routine. And he usually tells people, well, I work for a device company. And then I tell people he invented this device. So he waits for me to say that purposely. But what he's done on his own. And he worked hard for what he was doing. And for that, I'm very, very proud.
Oh, they worked me so hard.
50 to 60.